everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into something really cool. The idea that there are three totally different ways our minds work. This is all based on the groundbreaking work of Dr. Grandin, who figured out that we don't all process the world in the same way. And, understanding these differences, it can unlock so much potential. So let's jump right in with a quick question for you.
Okay, so I want you to do something for me. Just for a second, think of a church steeple. Go ahead, close your eyes if you want. Picture a church steeple. You got it? Good. Hold on to that image. All right, so what popped into your head? If you're like most people, you probably saw something like what's on the left, a kind of generalized, almost cartoonish outline of a steeple. But for Dr. Grandin, it's something completely different. Her mind instantly pulls up a rapid-fire slideshow of specific, photorealistic churches she's actually seen in her life. It's literally like her brain has its own internal Google images.
And that right there gets to the heart of her discovery. I mean, she was genuinely shocked to find out that her rich visual internal world wasn't the norm. That moment of surprise is what pushed her to categorize the very different ways our brains are wiring.
So this realization led her to create this amazing framework of three distinct cognitive styles, or, as she calls them, three kinds of minds. And trust me, figuring out which one you are, and just as importantly, which ones your friends and colleagues are, it can be a total game changer.
So first up, you've got the object visualizers. These are the photorealistic thinkers, just like Dr. Grandin. Their brains work in pictures, super specific, detailed pictures. These are your natural-born mechanics, artists, designers, and animal handlers, the people who can just see how things fit together in the real world.
Okay, next up are the pattern thinkers. You could also call them spatial visualizers. Now, they don't think in specific pictures. Instead, they see the world in patterns, in abstractions, and in relationships. Think of your mathematicians, your coders, your engineers, and even many musicians. They're the ones who see the elegant structure underneath it all.
And rounding out our trio, we have the verbal thinkers. These are the word and fact people. Their thinking is linear, it's sequential, it's based in language. They're amazing at writing, at remembering historical details, and at organizing big, complex projects. They're the ones who create the plans and make sure the whole thing makes sense from start to finish. Okay, this chart is fantastic because it lays it all out for us. You can see the different strengths we just talked about, but you can also see the struggles. For an object visualizer, for instance, something like abstract algebra can feel, well, literally impossible. And the big takeaway here is that every thinking style has careers where it can absolutely shine and areas where it's going to need some help. So, what's the problem? Well, here's the thing. When our schools and our workplaces ignore this cognitive diversity, we run into a huge problem. So often, our education system is built to reward just one of these thinking styles, and it ends up sidelining the others. And this is where Dr. Grandin sounds a really important alarm. With so much emphasis on purely abstract math like algebra as the gateway to everything else, we are literally filtering out these incredible visual thinkers before they even have a chance to show what they can do in fields like engineering, design, and the skilled trades. And believe me, this has real-world consequences. When schools get rid of classes like woodworking, auto shop, art, and even home economics, we see a nosedive in practical skills. You end up with a whole generation of students who've never held a real tool, who get mislabeled as not smart, when really, they just think differently. And look, this isn't just some theory. Dr. Grandin points out something that's frankly pretty shocking. There are large industrial plants in the US that now have to import complex equipment from places like Holland because we've simply stopped graduating enough of the visual thinkers who know how to design and build it. All right, so how do we fix this? The answer is actually pretty simple, but it's powerful. We have to get back to learning by doing.
And Dr. Grandin gives us a really clear roadmap for this. It all starts when you're a kid, with things like Legos and other building toys that teach your brain how to see things in 3D. From there, you introduce real tools, but you do it safely. That builds a foundation for taking hands-on classes in school, which can then grow into real, valuable career skills.
And these are the exact classes she says made her successful. Art, welding, sewing, even theater tech, where you're building sets. The point is, these classes teach everyone how to solve problems in the real world. They teach you how to take an idea from your head and turn it into something tangible.
So let's zoom out a bit. How does this all play out in the professional world, in big projects? Because here's the big secret. Innovation isn't about finding one super genius. It's all about getting these different kinds of thinkers in the same room, working together.
Let me give you a really powerful and, frankly, tragic example from Fukushima. The pattern thinkers, the mathematicians, they designed the reactor's incredibly complex systems. But there was a fatal flaw. A visual thinker would have walked down to the basement, looked around, and said, what happens if this room floods? They would have seen the water, but they weren't in the room.
But let's look at a positive example, a legendary one actually, the iPhone. You had Steve Jobs, the artist, the object visualizer. He was obsessed with the look, the feel, the elegant user interface. And then you had the engineers, the pattern thinkers, who had to figure out how to cram all that technology inside and make it work. The absolute magic of the iPhone is that it's a product of these two minds coming together.
And that really brings us to the most important point for any team, any company, any project. You need the whole team. You need the verbal thinker to organize the plan, the pattern thinker to design the abstract system, and the object visualizer to make sure it won't fail in the real world. That's how true innovation happens.
So, if there's one thing you take away from all this, it's this: awareness. Just recognizing that these different ways of thinking exist, and that each one is incredibly valuable. That's the foundation. It's the first step to building better schools, more innovative companies, and teams that can actually solve hard problems.
And that leaves me with a final question for you. Think about it for a second. Which kind of thinker are you? Are you an object visualizer, a pattern thinker, or a verbal thinker? But maybe even more importantly, who's on your team? Who are you missing that you need to solve your biggest problems?